Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the latest Walkabout Talkabout. I'm here today with Arturo Perez, who works at
Hello.
Kluge Interactive, the creators of Synth Riders, as well as some other stuff that he'll be telling us about. So,
That's right.
Arturo, I'll let you intro yourself way better than I can. So yeah, go for it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, Kluge actually started, you can say, in the early 2000s as a music magazine. So music was always in our DNA. But then really, the incarnation that we are today kind of went from 2007 as a design studio. And then we did a lot of UX and web design and web applications. And then in 2020, I think is when we fully became the VR game studio we are today.
Okay.
So it's been a while. It's been a bit of a journey.
Very cool. And so you said, because you started off early on, so you were like, VR is actually fairly recent for you guys then.
Yes.
When did Synth Riders come out, by the way?
Well, Synth Riders actually did get started in 2017 as a prototype. So our idea was like, oh, we need to do something to show off our VR skills, and so we were prototyping these games. And when Synth Riders stuck by 2018, we knew that was basically the only game we had in development at that time.
Okay. Very cool. So yeah, I mean I think that Walkabout started probably about the same time. Also, yeah, prototype, sort of like just playing around with it. So yeah, but then it launched in, was it 2019?
Well, actually, I think 2018 it is when it launched.
Okay.
But
on the Rift, it would have been.
Yeah, it was Steam, and it was.
Okay.
I think we had 11 updates on Steam before we launched on Quest on October of 2019.
Okay. But yeah, you guys, it's funny because I come from the visual effects and animation world, and there's so much crossover of sort of like that early days of just sort of like you forget sort of like, for those of us who are sort of living it day in and day out, we often forget that like, oh yeah, this has only been around for like 4, maybe 5 years for the most part. So yeah. But so we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you guys are doing quite a bit more than just Synth Riders as well. Do you want to maybe talk about some of the other projects that you guys are working on?
Yeah, we're working. Our follow-up to Synth Riders is a technical fighting game, or Street Fighter for VR. It's our North Star, which has been very exciting. It's from a left turn. Like at first we're like, oh, let's do another music game, but my co-founder Abraham, who's the guy who made Synth Riders, our creative director, he really loves fighting games. So we got into that genre, and so we're working on that in active development right now. It's been 3 years in the making, so it hasn't been easy. And then because we come from an agency background, we also have like a work for hire side, and we're making VR games there as well.
Okay, very cool. And yeah, Mighty Coconut was work for hire mostly on the visual effects and animation side of things, so I know that world very well as well. So I'm kind of curious to pick your brain a little bit. This is just me selfishly. How do you find balancing, because Synth Riders is a very active thing, like you just released the Shangri-La track a couple of days ago, but you guys are doing constant updates. How do you find that as a studio, balancing multiple projects kind of all going on at the same time in-house? How do you manage that and prioritize that stuff?
Well, part of it was because we were an agency as our inception. And so the Synth Riders comes out of a thing we call labs. And so it already had like that studio split of people and teams. And the people that are working on the work for hire side are the core of it is the original people that did the work for hire stuff, the services side on the agency side. So it was like a natural transition. And basically we now have 3 teams split up. The Synth Riders team, the Final Fury team, and the guys doing essentially Horizon work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have to say that just for us too, that even though we're really, really focused on Walkabout, we're doing so many different things within Walkabout that having that agency or, just sort of like that work for hire background, we were used to running, 6, 7, sometimes even more than that jobs simultaneously, which there's I can see that being a challenge for a lot of more traditional game studios, perhaps, that are used to just like one big AAA title that everyone's working on. Maybe you've got one in development or something like that. So that's pretty cool. So I'm curious to find out a little bit more about sort of like, so Synth Riders launched in 2018. What has been sort of like the kind of like the growth and like the evolution, because you've also been sort of seeing VR essentially sort of kind of grow up. What's that kind of journey been like for you guys?
Well, I think when we started developing was in 2017, and it was the wrong year. I don't know if you recall, but that was the year where like all investors stopped caring about VR. It became a joke, and if we said that out loud to our enterprise peers or the other agencies that were around us, they were like, "What are you doing?" But now I think in 2019, when the Quest came out, I think that was the game changer, and we were very happy when we saw those numbers at first. But I remember we launched day one of Synth Riders on Quest. We were very excited by the numbers, and I had a client at the office at the time, and we were celebrating, and she saw our enthusiasm, and she's like, hey, don't get too excited. This is your bread and butter. But a couple years later, it was evident that it wasn't. Quest 2 really showed us that, and then we started like saying no and letting go of big gigs on the agency side. I think our clients were very question mark, but we saw the writing was on the wall. So I think our timing was great. And as you probably know, the waves of the headset releases really, especially on Meta side, really help you.
Totally.
It's not a hockey stick growth. It's like there's periodic cycles of growth, and that's amazing.
Yeah. And have you guys found that, because you really actively support Synth Riders, have you found that there is sort of like a cadence or anything? Like how often do you guys release updates? Because I've played it and I follow it, but I'm not in it quite enough to know sort of like exactly what that release cadence is.
Yeah. I think the first year we did a lot of feature updates. Like we were the first rhythm game to do multiplayer. February 2020, that's when that came out. We did like spiral mode and power-ups, and a lot of like just spin mode. Those were all through 2020. And now we do a lot of regular music updates, about 3 to 4 big music updates a year.
Okay. Very cool. And I would also imagine, because you guys are doing a mix of, I guess it's a mix of originals or commissioned stuff, and then also some licensed stuff, which I guess it helps that you guys have a background as a music, because you said it was a music magazine, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, that really helped. We started with like synthwave music, because the game really comes from almost like a love letter to synthwave. And then we started expanding, Electro Swing was our first pack, where we had somebody like Stellar, who does have a major label background, and then kind of ladder up to artists like Muse and Bruno Mars and Lindsey Sterling. It was from the indie ground up, and now we do a mix. We like that.
Yeah. And that's sort of very much where we're at as well with some of the licensing stuff. Although I will say that sort of like for us, we often find, for the type of game that we're doing, it's easier for us to often license the IP than it is to get the music. The music rights are often way more difficult to get, or difficult to sort of like quantify, maybe just because of how the licensing terms of music usually work. It's just not set up kind of how we're set up. But that's when just talking about getting some of those big names, that is a big challenge to get all that music stuff. So gonna try to
and we've literally some of the contracts that we've done for the major labels have become templates for them, and so it shows you how new this whole medium is, even for them. So that's been pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm also kind of curious to pick your brain a little bit too, and just sort of like, this has been a very interesting year. So you can tell from the release date that it's sort of like, right around Christmas 2023. So Quest 3 is now out. mixed reality people are talking about. You're one of the games that really works well with mixed reality. It feels like that's a challenging thing to develop for, but is it too early to sort of see for you guys? Like, are a lot of people playing in mixed reality? Do you guys see that as a big sort of like, just like, what are your thoughts on, kind of some of the new emerging tech stuff?
Yeah, no, actually, we started with mixed reality. I think our first instinct was to go like, oh yeah, this is just another layer to what we're doing. You just add it at the end of the process. And then once we actually started doing it, we realized, oh no, this changes the thinking of things and how you conceptualize. And even starting like, we really customized our portal design, and then started adding layers of interaction into our note specials, sort of in mixed reality, which added this whole other layer, and then connected our portals. Like that whole thing was a layer process. So I think what the first thing was actually developing for mixed reality. You realize how rich it is and how much more there is to it, and how we're just scratching the surface. And then in terms of user feedback, like, we do see a pretty high percentage of our users turn it on, and we also see them be more engaged with the game. So we've been very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I mean, I could say, we're such an environmentally focused game that it is way harder for us to really incorporate something like mixed reality. And we do have some things that we're working on, but yeah, you guys are just so perfectly sort of like posed for that as well. I would imagine some of the other trends go ahead.
It's interesting because we didn't see that, because we're like this cyberpunk aesthetic game that is meant to be fully immersive. So we actually thought that we were the wrong game. Our team even pushed back against doing mixed reality. So I guess I'd encourage you to think about it differently, because it does. I think now that we see that, we sort of think differently about it. Like, even with our game, our fighting game, that's still the thought. Like, this mixed reality doesn't really suit it. But as we think about it more, we're finding ways to be clever with it.
Yeah. And I could definitely see, I mean, we're definitely talking about something. I mean, it's even too early for us to say exactly what that would be, but we're absolutely playing around in that space. And we're hoping to do something that will take advantage of that, but I think that it's a fundamentally different sort of thing than what we're doing, where you and I are sort of like sharing a virtual space. And I think that the bigger challenge with us is that so many people of our players play it multiplayer, and unless you're physically in the same room, it's difficult to sort of like have a shared multiplayer experience when you're in different room shapes and just that sort of thing. So it can be done. It just, you've got to limit it probably quite a bit more. So yeah. I know one of the other big ones that also seems like you guys are in a really good spot for hand tracking, especially Vision Pro only supporting hand tracking, no controllers. But I'd imagine that you guys are also like, in fact, do you already have a hand tracking only mode, or is it still controllers?
No, it's actually been difficult for us because the game is the main mechanic is precision based.
Oh yeah.
And so like when it comes to the higher levels of difficulty, it does prove challenging.
Oh, gotcha.
But we are like, things are like, the SDKs are getting better, the technology is getting better, and we're almost there. But we've also thought about in terms of limiting levels of difficulty for hand tracking, and we're sort of opening ourselves up to that. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's mostly the lag issue is probably what you're talking about, where there's just a little, the hands are just a little bit too slow. Although I will also say that probably one of the other things that, especially for your game, I would imagine that the haptics is such a big part of that. Just the vibrations that you get from the controller, like that's really what gives you the feedback that it would feel. Yeah, I'd imagine it would lose quite a bit without even just the haptics going on.
That's right. And that was definitely another concern point, was just haptics, which, but it's trade-offs, right? I think, and that's part of it. Is like, I think the team has had to learn how to embrace what you gain and sort of let go of what you lose, because in some of it, it's like, oh, that's not Synth Riders if it doesn't have this. And it's like, well, with the emerging tech, you have to keep embracing where it can go.
yeah, I know even before we started recording, we were lamenting a little bit of just sort of like it's sort of a blessing and a curse to be sort of like right on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff, because it means that things change very quickly underneath you often, as the industry changes or new devices come out, or just sort of like it's really, really exciting to be where we're at right now, but also it can be a real challenge when suddenly what you had sort of built something on changes underneath you. So
yeah, exactly, and it's literally happening all the time. You can't step back.
Yeah. So I know one of the other things that you were. Oh yeah, I know one of the other things you were talking about a little bit before we started recording was because you guys are also doing a lot of work within Horizon Worlds. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the projects that you're doing in there?
Yeah. Basically, we started working with them back in July of 2020, and so we've seen the platform evolve quite a bit. By the way, Lucas, we're going to have to do this in our game as well. Like you're just putting me to shame here. I just gotta point that out, man.
This is part of my strategy. But no, we should do a little because you can do the multiplayer. It might be harder to talk while playing an active rhythm game, but
depends on the experience you got. I mean, that's true. I gotta say, this is difficult for me.
That's true. I'm just used to it. So
you're so used to it. That's right. Right. And we actually do. I don't know if I can say specifics, but we do. Let's just say we have done golf in Horizon. So we'll have to talk about that.
We'll have to check that one out. Mm-hmm.
That's right. But yeah, we now, we've been on this journey with Horizon where at first we started making very simple games because the technology we've been evolving with the platform. But as of late, the games have gotten more and more involved. They go deeper and deeper, and they announced the new games with Connect, and it's been great to see that, to be a part of that. At first, we were developing purely in headset, and now we're using tools like Blender and other outside tools, and we're scripting outside of the headset as well. So just seeing how difficult it is to build a metaverse platform as complex as Horizon, but also like see how quickly it's evolved and how much more we can do now. And the games that we conceptualize today are so different. And for us, it was perfect because we did come from a team that was doing web design. So we've been able to sort of mature with the platform.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you mentioned that some of the other, like, especially when you were doing a lot of, you said it was kind of UI and UX was a lot of your focus before that's that. Right. So mostly web stuff, or was it a mix?
It was Lucas, I need some help here. It was a lot of web design stuff. That was part of the frustration, was that we missed that mobile wave, and we didn't get mobile gigs or mobile apps, and so we were like, instead of going after mobile and building things of our own in mobile, let's just go to where things are going in the future, and that's how that's part of the VR decision making. Yeah,
I mean, I would have to say though that sort of like one of the things that we talk about internally is that the UI and UX in VR is probably one of the most difficult things to get right. So the fact that you guys have such a background in that, like we spend a lot of time obsessing over just ways to make things as stupid simple as possible. And it's a real challenge, especially because the rules haven't really been written yet. And there's now a lot of things that people are figuring out, that stuff that, best practices and stuff, but all of that's been coming within the last couple of years as people have just been figuring out, and standards have finally. I do have to say, I'm so happy that everyone has finally kind of started using the same controller scheme, so that you've got the two thumb buttons, trigger grip, joystick, the thumbstick. Just finally, it felt like, everything is finally sort of like coalescing around a general idea. And now we're going to throw all that out the window in the next year. So it's going to be
super fun. It is a world of extremes, because we also saw the web as, when it went to flat design versus skeuomorphic. And we're more creative and more artistic in nature. So we were doing this very extravagant websites with lots of creative design touches into it. And then when the era of flat design came in, it was very, very monotonous work and sort of creatively draining. And then we come into VR and we're so happy but then it's like, oh, we would like some standards at least. That would be nice.
I will say though, one of the things that I think that, I mean, this might not be the thing that people think most of with VR, but just like menu design, and sort of like there is absolutely something about just putting your controls or like how you select stuff onto floating screens and putting it onto a flat surface. It just helps. Like our brains are so wired to think that way. I don't know exactly why it is that it works like that, but I mean, we do the exact same thing with our menus just because I found that, I mean, yes, the sort of like the, I can't believe I'm blanking on the term now, but sort of like the having the UI be sort of like part of the world or actually building it out, but then every time you want to change something, now you've got to rebuild that entire system or something. It's sort of like back with all those Splash websites in 2003, which I also made a couple of those that were, yes, beautiful, but from a design standpoint, impossible to maintain or update or change or just like a real nightmare like that. So
right.
Cool. I'm going to head on to the last hole here. Well, yeah, as we sort of play this last hole here, I'm also just kind of curious to get your thoughts and sort of like, kind of, we've talked a lot about emerging tech and things that are sort of coming up, but what are your sort of like, what's your predictions? Where do you feel like, what are you excited about that's sort of like, that's coming down the road that maybe isn't quite here yet? Or what are you guys sort of thinking about?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I mean, I think it's exciting to see the market continue to diversify. Like, and by that I mean like the entrance of Apple is really exciting. I think for us, I would say the thing that we look at differently is that we're not sort of eagerly awaiting the hockey stick moment. We are looking for steady growth, and I think it is a nice time in XR because it doesn't have the hockey stick growth, but it has an economy by which studios like us can build. So I'm just like, I'm excited by that, the current midst of big partners like Meta and Apple, and Samsung, Qualcomm, and Google coming in. What they bring to the table, the technology's being advanced enough where we can get more and more creative and deeper with our content. But at the same time, it's small and niche enough where we can experiment, try these things out, build games like Final Fury for us, which is a whole new category that hasn't been explored, and have the time to sort of figure it out. So I think I'm just excited about where we're at where it's sustainable. It's got a long-term perspective. I think the 5 to 10 year horizon, which we keep sort of talking about every 5 to 10 years, but I think that's right even now. And it's just steady growth, innovation, and just adapting all of these technologies at once. So it's more nuanced than like, oh, this thing is going to change everything. It's that day-to-day on the ground, ongoing transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think that in some ways, studios like us especially are kind of, it's very lucky for us that there hasn't been that hockey stick moment, so to speak.
Right.
Just because I think that, I mean, we were super, super small and we've been able to grow this over a few years. And I don't think that we would have been able to do that if there was suddenly a hockey stick and you just had tons and tons of investment dollars coming in and a lot of AAA games. So like, it's definitely been there's a lot of independent studios that have been able to grow up essentially sort of like with how things are. So that's a really, really good, really, really good perspective.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen this, but when we go to XR events, and there's a lot of people that have been here longer than even us, like, in the really unprofitable days, and I think there's a purity to our ecosystem, like a love for the medium, and just, when money is not driving everybody, I think there's the creativity is really the driver, and so that's really the most exciting for me.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I can absolutely see that. I think we are going to start seeing more of those AAA experiences and more of those like bigger games coming. But I also do feel like there's still this window right now where it's like it's a little bit friendlier, and it's definitely. And I think that we've really benefited by not having something like Steam, where there's so many games being released that it's very difficult to stand out. Whereas if you can get something up and working really well in just a good basic game, you can build on it over time. And yeah, it's definitely been. I definitely think that you might relate to this too, but I think that coming from, being a like a service business, then going over to not only sort of like making your own stuff, but then also live service is a massive sort of like just like mental change. We've had to think a lot more about, long-term QA support, just for like all these roles that we've never really had in house, because we're also, are you guys self-publishing as well, or do you have a publisher?
Yeah, that's right. No, I can relate to everything you're saying for sure. And we're figuring it all out, still to this day. Mm-hmm. And it helps to have the diversity. Like for us, the work for hire and working with Meta has trained us. We do a lot of live service games for them, and it's trained us to improve our own live services of Synth Riders. And when we think about Final Fury, we see that we've learned a lot, we've matured a lot as a studio, but it does take time to unpack all of this. So
yeah, totally.
This window is very nice.
Yeah. Well. So why don't we just hop down here, because it's a little difficult to shoot. So why don't we just warp down here onto the bridge?
Oh,
that way Wesley will be able to shoot us while we wrap it up. So, yeah. Cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Take some time to chat with us. Do you guys have a release date for Fury? Remind me the name one more time.
Final Fury.
Final Fury. Yeah.
We don't. We're still working heavily on the game. We just had a few rounds of closed testing, and we just announced the open beta coming up in 2024. So I think Synth Riders had 11 updates before it reached the Quest store, and we did it with the community. We plan to use the same playbook. Like we want to test it quite a bit. It's very PvP driven, so the community's feedback and getting a lot of users to tell us where the game's at is really important to us. So we actually don't want to put a launch date on the docket just yet, because we want to make sure that the community really gives us their feedback. Totally, yeah. Well, I guess then just in general, keep an eye out for it, because it'll probably be sometime coming soon-ish will be. Well, then I'll say the call to action is you can go to finalfuryvr.com and sign up for beta. Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, do that. Also, we didn't really even get a chance to chat about it much, but we're in Shangri-La. You guys just released Shangri-La La La, which was a remix that Chris Raymond did of the soundtrack that you're hearing right now for Shangri-La, that's now in Synth Riders. I just played it this morning. It's super fun. It's so bizarre to hear this as a synthwave remix, but it works. You could still pick up on it. But yeah, he had a lot of fun doing that one, I know. So anything else at all that you want to add? Yeah, just also stay tuned for Synth Riders. I think this collaboration is awesome. We've always admired how you guys have expanded your game, and all of the licensing work that you do is very inspiring to us. The translating all these epic titles like Myst or the Journey to the Center of the Earth onto VR is amazing. The Meow Wolf is, I mean, just bow down to that one. That's a milestone in VR, I think. And we have been doing this music experiences with Muse and Algorithm and The Offspring Come Out and Play and Lindsey Sterling. So we have 6 experiences that are like it's moved us from just a music game to a visual storytelling with music. Yeah. And I'll just say that without revealing too much, that we're basically doubling down on that aspect of our game, and we are looking to bring other worlds other visual worlds into Synth Riders as well. So you've actually inspired us a lot. So I think this collaboration is very appropriate. Awesome. Well, that's so great to hear. Well, thank you so much, Arturo, for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys all next time.